and supplies, but you need a place to track your stuff, cause you're so disorganized. You click open the web page, you heard about a critical role, and now you're ready to kick some butt in that mine shaft full of no's. It's D&D, D&D Beyond, yeah, D&D, D&D Beyond. You got your stats, you got your swords, and you got your invisible wall. It's D&D, D&D Beyond.
Hello, everyone. I'm Adam Bradford, the product director for D&D Beyond, and welcome to this week's edition of And Beyond. This week, you'll see that Todd is not here. I am here to tell you all about the latest updates with development for D&D Beyond, as well as answer all kinds of questions, so be prepared for that part. As always, let's talk about why we're here. I like a good agenda. So we're going to talk about where we are, the latest updates to D&D Beyond. We've had some big ones in the past month that really excited to talk a little bit more about, with the character sheet revamp getting into the hands of everyone in the community. We also had some big news this week with the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica announcement, as well as the Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron release. And that was a big surprise. A lot of trying to get that input into D&D Beyond. A lot of effort went into that, but we were really happy that we could get that together for everyone and to be able to share in that excitement. We've got a data update. I'm going to talk about, this says the least created races and class combos, but we're actually going to talk about the top, and we're going to talk about the bottom for both the Player's Handbook and Volo's Guide to Monster Races. And part of this is to maybe encourage everyone out there to play some of the less distributed combinations. So I think it'll be interesting to see and to look at that. So we're going to take a look at that data. And then we will talk about our short-term roadmap. We'll talk about some big changes to the way that Homebrew sharing, public sharing works, that we are going to have to implement because we have hit a critical mass in some of the problems that we're seeing with our Homebrew queue. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to dive into that today and really talk about what our solution to that's going to be and how that's going to affect everyone. So stay tuned for that. Definitely ask questions if you have them. We'll talk about our upcoming schedule for And Beyond, as well as some of the conventions that we're going to be hitting for the rest of the year. And finally, we are going to try our best to leave plenty of time for you to have your questions answered. As you probably know at this point, if you've seen one of these before, I really do my best to answer as many of the questions as possible, and most of the time questions are not a problem for me, so I will answer just about anything. Sometimes I have to say no comment to those, but most of the time I will tell you something, so be sure to ask the questions in chat. I've got my friend Todd Kenrick paying attention to chat, and so he's going to help me compile some of those questions for the end, but maybe preface it with like the @D&D Beyond or @question or something like that, where we can know that you're trying to ask a question and not just making some kind of comment out there. We'll get to the questions at the end. Let's jump in. Latest updates. We have a character sheet revamp that is live now. So this was a ton of effort for the team. I really actually just want to take 30 seconds here and, almost just applaud for the team. And hopefully everybody at home is applauding a little bit. This was a massive amount of effort. That was based on literally millions of points of feedback from the community in the first 6 to 8 months that the character sheet in its original incarnation was out. And just incredibly proud of the development team for pulling this off, for making such a drastic and sweeping change that improved so much for this. I truly am proud of what we're seeing with this. So really, really happy with the character sheet revamp. We'll touch on it a little bit more in just a moment. We did have the announcement for Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, and this is one of those things that when I first found out about it, it was just kind of a nod of, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm really excited about what's going to happen with that campaign setting. I'm excited about what that, means for the Magic the Gathering crowd that maybe hasn't played Dungeons and Dragons yet, but has been on the edge of that and maybe looking over into it, and then vice versa. I actually have not played Magic the Gathering. When I was young, when I was a child, and it was really, really starting to take off, I just didn't have the money for the cards. And so I never dove into the worlds of Magic the Gathering. But I've really kept tabs on the lore, and I constantly check out the artwork because the art is incredible for Magic. And so I am really excited to be able to dive into some of that lore that I've cared so much about without even playing that game. So really exciting announcement from Wizards of the Coast, and really excited to see what they do, and the response to the Magic the Gathering supplements that they've been putting out for the last couple of years really drove some of that decision to try this out. And to me, this is a no-brainer. Very excited to see Wizards of the Coast going in this direction, and excited to have this on D&D Beyond. And then we have the Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron. Eberron, I've played for, I guess, about 23 years, Dungeons & Dragons, and Eberron was actually the first time that I had a new setting as I've been playing. And so it was really exciting I remember back in 2002, I believe it was, I submitted for the contest, the setting contest that happened way back when. Spoiler alert, I did not win that contest, but I remember like it was yesterday when Keith Baker was announced as the winner, and the synopsis of what that setting was going to be came out. It's a very exciting setting, a lot of fans of Eberron out there, and we are really happy that we have been able to bring that to D&D Beyond, and that it has been brought to 5th edition. So this is also an exciting new way that Wizards of the Coast is distributing this content. And, of course, that has brought some confusion and everything else. And we're going to talk about that in just a little bit and what that means for D&D Beyond. But either way, I think that fans are really exciting that Wizards of the Coast is trying some new things here and is introducing some new settings. So really exciting time to be a fan. And then finally, we have started our And Beyond weekly variety stream. So the variety this week is that I'm talking to you about the recent updates for D&D Beyond and answering your questions. Next week, we're going to jump into an exciting time with Lisa Chen, and I think what's going to happen on that show is Todd and I, Lisa's going to teach us how to make a floral arrangement, and we're going to talk about that and dive into that. So you will never know what you're going to get on this show, and that excites me greatly. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have some great guests, so excited to get into that pretty soon. And then, yes, dev updates. If you are interested in what I am doing today and you really want to come and tune in for those, the typical target for that will be that we will have those on the last Wednesday of each month. So keep that in mind as well as we go forward. All right. Talk about Eberron a little bit more. So Eberron, again, this is a new distribution model. This is a new experiment. Even on the cover of this book, this electronic book that Wizards of the Coast has released, it said, explore this campaign prototype for Eberron, of the world of Eberron for the world's greatest role-playing game. And I think I'm really a fan of what they're trying to do here. This is a way that people can get this setting content into their hands probably a lot quicker than maybe some of the other distribution channels. So really excited about what's happening. Some of the confusion has come up, and we'll gladly say that this was a miss on our side. Again, as we're getting into some of this new stuff where we did not maybe clearly mark that this was originally kind of designated as playtest content, and then it has come out. There's a change to that I'm about to talk about, and then also that this was not going to be immediately available in our mobile app because of that playtest content status. So an edit and a revision came to the document last night that I got this change for the Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron. And so the introduction has actually been changed, and you can see that on the screen here. The game mechanics are usable in your campaign, but at this time they aren't officially part of the game and aren't permitted in D&D Adventures League events. These mechanics will evolve based on player feedback. This is a living document, and as these concepts are refined, this book will also be updated for free, so you will be kept up to date with any changes that are made to it. So that's a very important distinction. You can see that it's removing the standard language that was used for Unearthed Arcana playtest content and indicating that it's not like this content is going to come out and you guys pay for that content, and then at a later time, the content is updated in some other book that you'll have to go and pay for. So it's a very important distinction, and based on everything that I've been made aware of in this entire process, that was always the intent. And I think that just some of using some of the standard playtest language confused that a bit for some of the players and the community out there. So I really am trying to reassure everyone that what is happening with this is that if you have bought this content and you have Changelings and you have the Kalishtar and you have Warforged and all of that as a living document, as those mechanics might see revisions. I don't know what those revisions might be. That'll be based on feedback and the direction that Wizards of the Coast goes with that, the design team there. But as those revisions come, you're going to see that this book, this Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron, will see those updates, and you will always have the most up-to-date versions of that on D&D Beyond. And given that clarification of the approach, we also are, at this point in time, comfortable with putting this content into our mobile app. So our team is already starting to look into making that happen. I don't quite have an ETA for that yet, but we don't have any roadblocks in the way for us to now start to be sure that that's in the mobile app. So you will see constant updates to this as it is updated. It will always be as a living document. It will be up to date, and that's the beauty of a digital platform. And then also on top of that, you will see this come to the mobile app, and it will continue to see those updates there as well. So that's Eberron on D&D Beyond. Very excited about it. I played in a game on Monday on a stream where we were going through an exciting Eberron adventure with Dungeon Master Rudy Rutenberg. It is a great setting, and I really encourage everyone to dive into it and really check out what's going on with it. Really exciting that it has come to 5th edition. Character sheet updates. Let's talk about this for a second. So we're really happy with how this turned out, especially based on all of the feedback that we had over months and months after the original digital sheet iteration came out way back in beta. We collected feedback and we developed some design goals for what was happening with this revamp. And it eventually ended up being called a revamp because it was a really big change. And because we realized after receiving this feedback that we needed big changes for this to meet the needs of the community and players at the table. It was feedback focused. We wanted to provide those proper desktop views. We wanted better access to at-a-glance information. We wanted to get rid of those collapsibles. People really, by and large, seem to not like them. So we wanted to get rid of that, but still have access to the information very quickly and easily. Allow for more ad hoc customization. People wanted to have feats at first level outside of normal progression in the rules as written. So all of those kind of things. And then finally, provide a familiar feel to the sheet instead of trying to reinvent the wheel in some ways. And then improved PDF export. We knew that the PDF export needed a lot of work. And so those were our primary design goals with the character sheet revamp. And I think that we are really calling that a success because we set out to accomplish these goals. And based on the feedback since release, we have seen that those goals were accomplished. Another thing that I want to really clearly call out here, as we have told you all along the way, feedback matters to us. We know that 5th edition is as good as it is because of the lengthy playtesting process that D&D Next was, and everything that the Wizards of the Coast D&D team went through for that. It made the game better, and in my humble opinion, it's made it the best edition of Dungeons and Dragons ever. And so all of that feedback is really important to Wizards of the Coast as they are designing the game. It's really important to us as we are designing the digital tool set that's going with the game. And so we got some initial early feedback after the character sheet revamp was released that we have acted on very quickly, and we're going to continue to act on some of that initial feedback as we finish that out in the coming weeks. But some of the feedback that came to us was you wanted some of this information to show up on the screen at all times, especially on mobile. So on desktop, you could kind of see it most all the time, but on mobile, you wanted things like armor class and initiative always there. That's something that we had stuck into a combat section. Of course, we did this based on feedback, but we didn't understand the unintended consequences of removing it from some of the other places. So we have already made that change, and we've made that available everywhere. We've pulled it out of that combat section. Speaking of the combat section, we realized that once you removed armor class and initiative from that section wasn't incredibly compelling anymore. So we actually got rid of that. And then we had this layout consolidation where we moved attacks into the actions section where you can see everything that your character can do with the action economy all in one place. We combined the two different sections where people were really providing feedback that, hey, we're having to scroll too much in too small of an area. So we've combined that on the sheet, and you can see that change is live already. And we've gotten a lot of positive confirmation that that was the right direction to go. We have in those areas, so people were talking about whether it's actions or spells or what have you, we want to see that kind of an all option for those things. So I could see all of my spells in general right away when I go to the spells section. But then if I want to drill down into specific levels, I can do that with filters. So we've made that change as well, and you can see that on live. Desktop view on tablet landscape. This was an overwhelming bit of feedback. So when we originally released this revamp a few weeks ago, we had a concept that once you were between the 768 pixel kind of dimension that most tablets are going to have in portrait mode, after you change to landscape, they typically go to 1024, and some tablets like this giant one that I have right here are a little bit different. But ultimately, the idea was we were changing to a very dedicated tablet view of that information. And many of you ended up missing the fact that at 1024, at that resolution, you weren't getting something that looked a little bit more like the desktop sheet. So we made that change based on the feedback, and I think it was it was the right change. And I'm really digging the fact that we were able to. It was a little bit of a challenge, but able to fit all of that information into the 1024 resolution. So made that change, and it was a good direction. And then something that we haven't quite done yet, but we are conceptualizing and trying to figure out how this would work, is we are hearing the message through feedback that people are missing some of the swipe functionality on mobile. That right now, if you swipe on mobile, it pulls in and out the sidebar, but you are missing the navigation between pages or sections with the swiping. So we are looking at how we can reintegrate swiping as something that is going to navigate you between the different sections of the character sheet. But we've also heard the other side of that, where the feedback is pretty strong, and it looks like we probably have a 50-50 split out there, where some of you didn't want to swipe. So if you were on the first section and you needed to get to section 4, you didn't want to swipe through the other two sections to get there. So the reason that we're taking our time with this part of it is we want to make sure that we nail the design where you can still have the quick jump capability, but then be able to swipe if that's your preferred method. So we're trying to do a hybrid of those two approaches. And based on what I've seen so far, I think we're going to have a really good solution for this. And that is something that we're working on in the coming weeks, and we're going to get that out. But the main thing that I really want to emphasize with this is your feedback does matter. And so we've said this the whole time. We want you to provide that feedback. It's not hurting our feelings in any way. We want to hear this stuff because at the end of the day, what we care about more than anything else is providing the community with what you need to enhance your experience around the table. And so based on that feedback, we're going to always take that into consideration. We're going to take it very seriously. We're not always going to act on every bit of that feedback because what is important to, some people might not be as important to the entire view of the community that we receive. But either way, it is important. It is something that we take into consideration. And I think that we have shown the community that we want to take it patiently as well. We don't want knee-jerk reactions to any of this. We want to make sure that we are making the best decisions for the overall community. And so continue to give that feedback, and it's going to continue to be important to us as we further improve and enhance what's going on with this digital character sheet. So I'm really excited about what has happened to this point, and I'm really excited about what's going to happen in the days to come based on that feedback. All right, I'm going to take a drink of my sweet tea. You like this? This little sticker that I got because I wanted to brand my sweet tea. All right. Sweet tea is probably my kryptonite. I would be in impeccable shape if it wasn't for sweet tea and chicken wings, probably. All right. So next, let's go ahead and give out a legendary bundle. I've heard that you guys like these giveaways. I definitely like the legendary bundle. It is all of the content on D&D Beyond, the digital content. So right now, that does not include anything that is up for pre-order because we have 3 products that are available for pre-order, so we don't want to inflate the price of the bundle for something that's not available yet. But it is everything that is currently released, including the Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron. So we're going to give away a legendary bundle. There's a chat delay, so I need you to type something in chat where we can have you register as a real person out there. And then we are going to give this away after I talk a little bit longer to make sure that no one is getting left out due to the chat delay. I think we're probably in a good place now that I am going to give this out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Dr. Strange Fate. Excellent username also. Congratulations. You have won a legendary bundle, Dr. Strange Fate. So that is an amalgamation of the 2, primary sorcerer, wizard, mage type characters in both the DC and Marvel universe. Well done on the username, and congratulations on winning a legendary bundle. Moving on. Let's talk about a data update. So I told you at the beginning that we're going to talk about a little bit about the least created and played races and classes, but we're going to start with talking about the most popular builds that we have with millions of characters on D&D Beyond right now. I don't know if we're at 4 or 5 million characters, but there's a whole lot of characters out there, and we're getting some really, really great data from this. So I broke this up into Player's Handbook races because, of course, those have been out longer and are going to see more use throughout, especially our beta period. But then Volo's Guide to Monsters races, those are kind of a different subset, and we can see something different going on there. But in the Player's Handbook, it is no surprise that human fighters are at the top of the list. I want to emphasize this is by an overwhelming margin. Okay, so I don't think human fighters are ever going to be dethroned from being the most popular build, really in any Dungeons & Dragons game. Human fighter, historically, even all the way back to first edition, are the most popular build in Dungeons & Dragons. Then I was a little bit surprised about this one because of the popularity of humans in particular. But the Elf Ranger, this is very, very much an archetype that we're familiar with. The Elf Ranger is the second most popular combination, followed by Human Rogue and Wizard, which again makes a lot of sense based on the history of the game. And then we do have the Elf Rogue sneaks in as the 5th slot there. So those are the most popular things that we see from the Player's Handbook. Volo's Guide to Monster Races, the Aasimar are incredibly popular, and you can see this. I was a little surprised about Aasimar Paladin just because of where Paladin is in the relative placement of all the classes overall. But the combination of Aasimar and Paladin is really, really compelling to folks. They are number one there, and then we have the Aasimar Warlock and Cleric is up there at the top. And then people love the Tabaxi, and they love this version of the Catfolk. And we see that the Tabaxi Rogue and Monk. This one was a little surprising to me. I know that Tabaxi make incredibly good monks, and are very suited to that because of their racial traits. But it is still surprising to see, as low as Monk is on the overall class creation list, you do see a lot of Tabaxi monks here as well. So those are the most popular builds that we're seeing from those two kind of largest grouping of races that we have in those two sources. So then talking about least popular right now on D&D Beyond. And we are bringing this up today to encourage people to maybe play something really, really unique out there. So I would love to do one of these in another 6 months, a year's time, and see that Gnome Paladins, which are the least popular combination out there right now, that Gnome Paladins have taken over and they are not the bottom slot anymore. That someone out there is playing that devout, stalwart champion of Garl Glittergold, that you are a tricksy type paladin somehow, whatever the story compelling thing that you can do there. But I would love to see some gnome paladins rise up in the ranks of the community. Then we have half-orc wizards and sorcerers. Half-orcs are not incredibly intelligent on average and charismatic on average, so that makes a lot of sense, but I would still love to see some representation there. And then gnome monk and halfling paladin. I was really intrigued on the halfling paladin front because I actually, anecdotally, personally, know a lot of people who have played halfling paladins, but they are in the number 5 slot for least popular there. And then Volo's Guide to Monster Races. Poor hobgoblins. So hobgoblins are definitely, by a pretty large degree, at the bottom of the ranking for kind of across the board on Volo's Guide to Monster Races. I am surprised by this because outside of half-orcs, hobgoblins are probably my favorite race. I think that there is some really compelling lore around what's going on with hobgoblins. So the hobgoblin druid and the hobgoblin bard, again, I know that their racial traits maybe aren't as conducive to playing some of those races, but I think from a story perspective, there are some really compelling nuggets that could go on with hobgoblin characters. And then orcs, sorcerer and druid, they are also pretty low. And then finally, our hobgoblin sorcerer. So hobgoblins and orcs are the least most popular races out of the Volo's Guide to Monsters races, but then these particular combinations are the least popular. So that is some maybe interesting or unique data, an angle for data this month, but we wanted to share that because we found it kind of fascinating. Out of the huge sampling of characters that we have now, these are the least popular builds. So I really challenge players out there everywhere to see if you can give these combinations a spin. And if you do, let us know about it. Tweet at us, share the character with the pretty character cards that come now with the sheet revamp. Share those with us. We would love to see those and hear about your interesting and unique characters out there for these combinations. All right, let's talk about where we are going. So in progress, we have some additional character sheet updates that we are currently working on. And that abbreviation right there is Book of Ancient Secrets. That's what that stands for. So we are working on currently, we were having meetings about this yesterday, about how we're going to allow for the Book of Ancient Secrets to allow for any type of ritual to be added to that, where you can consolidate how that's working in your character sheet now. We realize that's a gap, so we're working on that. Things like Ritual Caster would work very similarly to that, where you can finally add additional rituals to those, in that case, that feat and the ritual book that comes with it. We we are talking about the melee attack cantrips and trying to get some fixes in place for that. So this is Green Flame Blade, Booming Blade, and then the solution that we would put in place. I've actually seen several people attempting to do this with homebrew content, which is great. I think it's a really great idea to try to create some additional spells in the vein of Green Flame Blade and Booming Blade. The solution that we'll put in place, you will be able to use that in homebrew as well. But ultimately, again, this could change as we completely implement it. But I think the target for us right now is for you, since these are tied to a specific type of melee weapon attack, you are going to be able to, on the attack entry for any of the weapons, you can designate that, hey, I want this to be tied to Booming Blade, and it will allow you to choose from any cantrip that takes that kind of path that you have as a known spell. And so you can, just similar to how we're handling Pact Weapon and Hexblade right now, that's the target for what we're trying to do there. And then you'll be able to have that called out in the attack section, and it will remind you that you can have that extra damage, and it will tell you what your attack bonus is with that. We have some other things that we're trying to work through, like exhaustion, and being able to track the different levels of exhaustion. So that is in progress as well. So you're going to see a lot of these smaller quality of life updates that did not make it into the huge critical mass of what came with the character sheet revamp, but they are things that have been on our list for some time, and we are knocking those out. We're going to be knocking those out, pretty quickly in the coming weeks as we are, kind of shoring up everything and shoring up the foundations before we move into some of the other new things that we're going to do. We've got some updates to homebrew sharing, public sharing for homebrew. That is something that I'm going to talk about a much deeper dive here in just a moment, but that is something else that's going on right now. We've got the mobile app beta right now with that. The second phase of our beta is in development. I don't quite have a target for you yet on that, but I definitely can say that we're getting down the road on that. And I'm starting to see how the listings and all of that information and being able to find a spell incredibly quickly, all of that is really, really looking good. It's very snappy. I'm very excited about that. So we'll have more news on that in the near future. And then we have started actual development. So it's not just something that we're conceptualizing or talking about or waiting on resources for. We have our Twitch extension in development. I've seen things. It is very exciting. I know that we'll have more to share on that, soon. And I'm really excited for people to start to get a look at what we're going to do with that. It's just a new way to be able to watch Dungeons and Dragons streaming, and it's a way for viewers to have on-demand information about the player characters that are taking part in those streams. So really exciting stuff. I hate to be a tease right now, but I'm hoping I'm going to have more to share and maybe even show about that, pretty soon. But it is in development. Upcoming means that we have not actually written any code for this yet, or at least we haven't written any huge amounts of code for it. But we are essentially in the concept phase for it. We're trying to make sure that we're covering all the bases from a design standpoint for when we do have the resources ready to go on the development side, that we can go and make this happen. But source management, we've been talking about that a little bit. That is coming. That is a priority that's right on the horizon that we're going to get to. And then as I shared a little earlier, we have mobile swiping that we're trying to work through. We're working on the design for that to make sure that we don't cripple the people that really like the quick jump navigation, and that we also give people that prefer swiping a way to do that. And then finally, we have the creatures section of the character sheet that is right on the horizon. This is where you're going to have a new section that shows up kind of in that big right bottom area on the character sheet if you're looking at desktop, where you'll have the ability to kind of save as favorites wild shape configurations. So you'll be able to pull that in if you're a druid. You'll be able to pull in familiars. You'll be able to pull in mounts. You'll be able to just pull in miscellaneous creatures. For instance, if you have a figurine of wondrous power and you want the statistics for a dire wolf to go with that, or you have Guinevere and you want a dire panther to go with that. All of that will be possible within this creatures section, and the way that will conceptually work is you can designate what type of creature you're talking about. You would pull it into the section. If you click the creature in that section, the sidebar will populate with a stat block of that creature with any type of calculations applied to it. So familiars, for instance, can attack. All of that will be accounted for in the stat block. You will be able to track hit points and health there. So if you're a druid and you're wild shaping into a brown bear, that would populate it as a stat block. You would see that the mental ability scores, for instance, come in from you as a druid, but then you can track the health. And once your bear, drops down to 0 hit points, you know that, and then you know that you're popped out of wild shape at that point. So all of that is something that's coming on the near horizon. We're excited to get into that because that's going to be incredibly convenient for people that are playing to be able to pull in Monster Manual, Volo's Guide to Monsters, any kind of stat block for use very quickly at the table, and that's going to be the big part of that creatures section. All right, so let's talk about homebrew sharing. Trying to speed up a little bit here, make sure we have plenty of time for questions. All right, so homebrew sharing, we have a couple of pretty big problems that are coming out. First of all, I want to state that when we initially put homebrew creation out there as a feature, this was something that we knew was important, but we knew that we weren't able to prioritize a lot about the flow of how that would work when we were doing our first pass. And so we really did just put the tools that we as the D&D Beyond team use to input all this content that you're seeing. We put that out there for users to start utilizing, to start using modifiers like we use and all of that. This has seen more submissions than I ever imagined it would at this point in time, which is a wonderful thing, and we are so happy that we're seeing that. But it has been a big surprise for us, and one of the things that has happened is the submissions volume that is coming in for homebrew creations that the community is wanting to share publicly has overwhelmed our moderation team. And we have at some points had 7 different moderators that are really paying attention to this homebrew queue. And even with that many people trying to wade through the queue, there are just too many submissions, and we are not able to keep up with the flow. We're essentially at a point that even if we added triple the number of moderators, we would still have a problem doing this because it is coming in, at just too great of a volume. So that was one of our problems. And then the other problem is on your side. We understand that right now you're having to wait too long for a turnaround on something getting approved for sharing publicly. And it is a bad experience, and we don't want you to have a bad experience with that. So the lengthy approval process time is unacceptable, and so we have had to really, really think through. As I told you before, I tell you all the time, we don't want to make knee-jerk reactions about any of these things. And so we've really thought about this for a couple of months, trying to conceptualize what the best path for us to take is. And we are going to do the following as a solution. We are going to remove the approval process. So as you are going forward, and these changes aren't quite live yet. They will be. Some of them have happened already, but over the next few weeks, we're going to see kind of all of this roll out to the community. But you are going to be able to publish and share homebrew content instantly. So there's not going to be a queue that it hits going forward. It's going to go straight through, and the public will be able to access that content immediately. All right? So no approval queue is going to happen. With that change, we understand completely that it becomes far more important for the community to be able to report bad homebrew content that violates any of our guidelines, any type of content that is replicating something that is published elsewhere. All of that is going to be available for the community to report. You can do this now, but it's going to become much more of a focus for us that reporting is an important component of this, since we are not able to deal with the volume that is coming in on this side of things. We are going to really err on the side of our community and the user here, and allow that homebrew content to come through immediately, and then try to rely on the community to help us enforce the good guidelines that we want for this content. So the rating and reporting system is going to be very important, and you're going to see changes over time to make that better and better. If you are seeing content that is just not good content for the community, down rating that is going to truly matter. And so we're going to get to a point where if something is downrated enough, it is going to be removed from the public listing view. That doesn't mean that the content itself is removed and someone can still get to that content with a URL, a direct URL to it. It's just we're going to do our best to get rid of the noise from the homebrew listing itself. So we're going to have that in place. We're going to constantly be watching what that acceptable threshold is, and we will tweak that as we go, and we'll experiment to decide on what's going to be best there. But either way, rating and being able to report bad homebrew content is going to be something that's really important in this new direction that we're going. Also, we're going to have pre-publishing checks that go in place that are also going to be very important. I think you guys are probably seeing some of this already if you're trying to submit homebrew content, because we've definitely rolled out some of these pre-publishing checks, that if something carries text that is far too close to an official item or element, it's going to tell you right there and essentially say, hey, you can't publish this for the public consumption because it is too close to this official content or something else that's on D&D Beyond. I want to emphasize for everyone, if you have content that, for instance, let's say that we have a Sunblade, and I want to create homebrew content based on the Sunblade, and I want it to more or less be a Sunblade, but I want it to be a mace for whatever reason. You can certainly do that, and you can start with Sunblade and call it, the Sunhammer or whatever. If that is too close and too derivative of that Sunblade, it is not going to be appropriate for public sharing. But we are encouraging you. We want you to, this is the reason the system exists. We want you to use that privately. And anything that is private as homebrew, you are able to use within your campaign. So if you're a DM creating that, you're able to give that to your players with no issues within a campaign. It's just not content that we can, due to licensing and copyrights and everything else, it's not content that we will have publicly available to share. So that's the really important distinction here. We want you to make variations and iterations on this stuff, but you would use that privately and within your campaign. All right? So those pre-publishing checks, it's going to do things like make sure that you haven't put links in your description. It's going to do things like make sure you're not embedding images in your description. All of the things that really, really get us into trouble, and you've seen if you've submitted for approval in the past that our moderators have to really, really be on top of making sure that we're not infringing copyrights out there, especially with images, which brings me to kind of the last major point here. We will not be allowing image uploading for the public sharing. Now, again, if you create an image that you want to tag and place onto that magic item for use within your campaign or that spell or that monster, you can do that all day long because you're using that privately for yourself or players in your campaign. But we are having to remove images here because we are getting thousands and thousands of submissions where people are going to Google and they're finding artwork that belongs to someone else, and they're trying to use that on these homebrew elements to share them with other people. And we just flat out can't allow that to happen because there are way too many legal hurdles and everything else. And so for homebrew public sharing, we are at least at this point in time, until I'll talk about one other thing that's going to happen eventually. But at this point in time, we're going to have to remove the image. So it's going to strip the image, as you share that publicly. But again, privately, you can still have the image. That image is going to show up for you and any of your players for your private use if you're the owner. Just the public sharing is going to have to strip it. We are going to keep an eye on all of this, just like we've been keeping an eye on it up to this point, and we've arrived at this place where we are now. But we're having to make these changes because we are drinking water from a fire hose, and it's not working for anyone. It's not working for the community. It's not working for our moderation staff. So this is the direction that we're going. As always, we would love your feedback as we implement some of these changes. We will keep an eye on it. We will do our best to make this a better experience for everyone. And I really think that the best thing that this does is this removes the weight. So if someone is really excited about making content on D&D Beyond, you can share that with the public immediately, and you can share that on Twitter immediately, and people can get right to it and add it to their collection. But we'll continue to keep an eye. Last thing I'll mention as far as images go, one of the things that we plan and have on our roadmap to do is, whether it's for homebrew content or even official content, we want to implement a feature where you can customize an image. So even if we have an official bit of content, let's say, let's take that Sunblade again, and you have official artwork for the Sunblade, but then your character gets a Sunblade and your DM describes that differently. And maybe you're an artist and you go out there and you draw this Sunblade. We do want to implement a feature in the future where, just like you can override attack bonuses and the names of magic items, you would be able to override the image for your version of the Sunblade. So that is something that's on our roadmap and we want to implement. But again, in the short term, we're going to have to stem the tide of some of these images coming through, that are infringing on copyrights out there. And this is the direction we're taking. Let us know what you think about it as we continue to roll this out. And I'll be happy to answer any questions about it in just a moment. All right, upcoming schedule. So as I alluded to earlier, in August, so I think that's next week. So August the 1st, we've got Lisa Chen that's going to be on the show. Todd and I are going to talk to her. We're going to apparently make a floral arrangement. I can't wait. My wife will definitely enjoy that quite a bit. So we're gonna do that with her on next Wednesday, August the 1st. And then we do have Gen Con. So a lot of the members of the D&D Beyond team are going to be at Gen Con. I don't know if you've heard of this live show that Critical Role is going to be having, but we are going to be at the live show partnering with them. We're going to be in the entrance of the theater where that's being held. So if you happen to have tickets and you're going, I'm pretty sure they're sold out. They were sold out a long time ago. But if you happen to have tickets and you're going to be there, drop by and say hello. You won't be able to miss us. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone out there. Come and meet the D&D Beyond team. And then I can't quite talk about August the 8th yet, but because we're kind of trying to finalize one of the guests, but I'm sure we'll have some news about that soon. But on August the 15th, we're going to be talking with Mike Merles, and actually Todd and I are both going to be in Seattle for that. So we're going to be talking with Mike Merles in Seattle, live in person, and confirmed yesterday, very excited about it. We're going to be talking about wrestling with Mike. So I'm really excited on a personal level about that. Mike is a huge wrestling fan. I am as well. So we're going to get into that with Mike. And then there may even be, some subclass design for somebody that might be able to wrestle a little bit. So anyway, a lot of fun stuff coming up in August. Be sure to tune in for that. In October, we've got TwitchCon, and we're going to have a presence there. So if you're coming to that, love to say hello as well. And then finally in November, GameholeCon, we're going to be doing some streaming. I think that there are tickets on sale right now for gaming events out there. So hopefully if you're attending that in Wisconsin in November, I'm going to be there. Todd's going to be there. Some others from the D&D Beyond team are going to be there. So come say hello. We might even be able to play a game together. So looking forward to that. That is what is upcoming, and we wanted to share that with you. I'm going to give away another legendary bundle. And you have to type something in chat here for this to happen. I am going to continue to talk for just a little bit to make sure everyone gets through the chat delay and that everyone has a chance to enter. But just type something in chat. Just let us know you're there. And we are going to give away that legendary bundle in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hassan 382. How do you spell that? Hasen. And then what was the last part? 382. Hassan 382. Congratulations. You've won a legendary bundle. We will get with you after the show. We'll message you through Twitch messaging and or on D&D Beyond if we can find you there and award the legendary bundle. Congratulations for that. And now I am pretty sure it is time for questions. So I'm going to look and see. I heard this tablet just pinging. It says I have 50 messages. I guess that means that we have 50 questions. So we're going to see what we can do to get through these. All right. Oh, good grief, folks. Okay. AlphaGator, last time you talked about exploring the viability of developing a VTT. Any updates? Did I talk about that? I don't remember really talking about that. No updates for sure. But we're exploring whatever we can do that is going to enhance Dungeons and Dragons gameplay. But yeah, no updates for sure. Question: encounter sheets for DMs. This is something that pretty much what you saw in our short-term roadmap today that I talked through. Encounter building and kind of collecting monsters for encounters is pretty much just outside that window. So that's an indication that it's not on what you saw today, but it's something that we would start looking at right after that. Hats in the Belfry. I love it. What is your favorite class to play? You asking me this? That's a great question. All right. I can definitely tell you race. I love half orcs. I don't necessarily know why, but I love half orcs. I like bards a lot. I really, really like paladins. I would say paladin is just what's true to my heart the most. It's dearest. It was my first character in Dungeons and Dragons. It was my first character in World of Warcraft. So I'm a paladin player is what I've got to go with there. All right, Luke S77. Are custom race groups planned at all? This is a really good question. So if not everyone understands what this is, we have collected a lot of the races. It was getting too unwieldy in the character builder, especially when Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes introduced, 35 tiefling variants or something. When that happened, we needed to kind of collect and fold up some of those races. We have not really talked about custom race groups yet, but if this is something that you want to see, I encourage you to continue to provide feedback on that, and we'll see where we can prioritize it. Hadner Fallen. How are settings going to show up in D&D in DDB? Will I, for example, pick setting or all in character generation to filter out stuff? This is a really good question, and you will see our answer to this for sure by the time that Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica releases in November. So part of what we have to do for that, and this is going to tie into source management heavily, that is going to be something that the concept that we currently are targeting is that when you go to the character builder, you will choose the setting that you're playing in kind of as the first thing even before you go through character creation. So based on how that's going to work with a Magic the Gathering setting in that case, even Eberron at that point in time, any other settings that Wizards of the Coast might introduce, we are going to be altering the flow. We are going to be altering some of the flows in the character builder in the short term anyway. And so as that starts to happen, you're going to see those changes come into place. Very good question. Would you... At what stage is the mobile app character sheet? Early planning, design. Okay. Early planning to design, active coding, testing, refinement. So this is a really good question. I have talked about before the mobile, the character sheet in the mobile app. Clarification, you can absolutely use the character sheet via browser on your phone with no issues. So you can definitely use this on mobile. But having that character sheet inside the mobile app in some capacity, first of all, our mobile app is going to get really, really big at some point. We've got an e-reader app right now. We've got listings and compendium content coming to that in the next phase of beta. We've actually got to make some decisions about how character sheets would integrate into that app. Is that app becoming too spread out at that point in time? These are all things that we're talking about. But from that perspective, we are certainly, now that we are pretty confident with where the character sheet is on the website, and we're confident in the direction it's taken, and we're in a good place with that, we will start at this point figuring out how to get that in the mobile app. So no coding has happened in that. We are still doing development for the second phase of our mobile app beta, which is to get those compendium listings in place. So no coding. It is something that we are conceptualizing now that we feel like we're in a very comfortable place with where the character sheet layout and usage is. DM Anvil. Will there be D&D Beyond gift cards, codes before this holiday season? I really hope so. It's my honest answer to that. Making that happen is a whole lot harder, not from a development standpoint, a whole lot harder from a business standpoint than I would like for it to be. But I am trying, and I hope we have more news that we can share on that in the future. Let's see. Unruly Cow, my birthday is Monday. Happy birthday. Can I get a legendary bundle, please? We'll see how lucky you are. All right, Fire 9 Lizard. Any chance that the Artificer will be rolled into Eberron? I will answer this by referring you to a tweet that I just saw come out with, by Mike Merle. So the only reason I would talk about this is I saw the tweet yesterday, I think. He did just simply mention that as part of this Eberron content that is coming out, again, in his tweet, he mentioned something about the Artificer somehow coming to that. I can tell you, on our side, as soon as the Artificer sees its next official pass, whether that's part of Unearthed Arcana, part of the living document that is Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron, we will absolutely support the Artificer, and it will be added when that time comes. Let's see. Cronin, when multi-classing, the spell attack modifier and DC numbers double. Is that intentional? No, it's not. If we have that going on, we'll need, please drop a bug report onto the forums, and we'll certainly get onto that. I know that numbers, if you have multi-class, two different spellcasting classes, the numbers show up with slashes in between them. But if that is going on, that is unintended, and we will squash the bug. Marcian Tobey. Hey, Adam, I'm a Tortle Celestial Warlock. Where does that land on the commonality? I don't know that specific one, but Tortle is pretty close to the bottom, primarily because it was available later than the other races. So, it's hard to compare apples to apples there. But I think that it's safe to say that is a pretty unique character combination. CG Player 2000, wild shape on the character sheet. I touched on that earlier. That's going to be in that creatures section that we're going to get to soon. Mr. Lou A, how about third-party content? Kobold Press, this one keeps coming up, and it's something that I just don't have an answer for. The answer right now is no, that we're not going to have that content, but it is something that I continue to look into. W9JDS, is the mobile application just a web app thrown inside an application, or are you actually building a native mobile application? That is a little bit of a complicated question, but Parts of it are using web views. I'm not incredibly technical. This is my layman's understanding of it. Part of it's using web views to leverage what we have with compendium content on the site. Everything that's happening right now with the spells listing, monsters listing, classes, all of that is happening natively, and it's going to be a really, really good experience. All right, let's see. BNAA UK. Is there any chance of exporting character sheets to Fantasy Grounds? Something we would love to do. Haven't been able to prioritize at this time. 10.10.506. Can a way to add spells per DM without creating a class more than the class allows be done? Yes, this is something I'm trying to figure out if I want to say this or not yet, because as soon as I say anything, the expectation is it'll be out tomorrow. So let me just go on and say it's not going to be out tomorrow. But yes, we are intending to have a way for you to add spells outside of normal progression, similar to what we do with feats. But no ETA yet on that. We only have one